Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started. How are you guys doing today? Well, it's good to be back. I've been sick, so that's been fun. Been kind of KO'd with the flu. Still have a little upper respiratory, a little coughing, so got some cough drops, got some tea, so we'll see how long I could go. But I wanted to get back and start working on a few things as well. Finally got around to sort of getting a video up, so keep things moving. While some people sort of trickle in, I figured let's just go ahead and jump in and talk about, it's January, it's the new year, it's 2025. Hi, bud. Sorry, my dog is excitable right now. There he is. What are you doing, Nugget? I know. Yeah. He's got a lot of energy right now, so hopefully he's not a terror. But I figured, you know, it's still January 2025, so let's go ahead and jump in. I figured talk a little bit sort of about the channel, a little bit about sort of what is going on in 2024, and what's kind of going to be plans for kind of going forward. I thought that'd be a good thing to talk about while people kind of trickle in a little bit. So might as well do that. Let me pull some of this stuff up so I can see it. Get a look at some of these numbers and things. Pull this up. So hopefully you guys are having had a good week. It's a nice weekend. It's Saturday for me, at least right now. For a not too long of a week. He was actually off yesterday, which was nice. Got a lot of stuff kind of done. Which is nice. Let's see, gonna go ahead and here we go. So one of the things is that right now for the channel, still very much focused on subscriber counts. We're getting very close to sort of that 500 milestone. You know, obviously a lot of channels move a lot faster than mine. That's fine. Like I said, I'm not trying to make YouTube my business, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we kind of go into some of the other topics we're going to talk about today. So it's very slow growth, but it's very manageable growth. And I want to make sure that I'm sort of a little bit prepared for sort of that 500 mark and sort of what that means monetarily, because we're going to open it up at that point probably for some form of monetization, but probably channel memberships and figure out what that's going to look like. I know a lot of people sort of ask for some of the resources that we've talked about on the channel, so I think that maybe that will be a good thing to maybe kind of put there, just as sort of incentive for that. Like I said, not really trying to make this a day job by any means, but anything that goes to sort of supporting the hobby, which helps me buy books, post the website, do that kind of stuff, buy equipment, buy microphone or camera or whatever. And I'd like to get a new camera at some point. Right now I'm just kind of using a webcam. Would like to get sort of like a DSLR, but obviously those things are a little bit more expensive, and I kind of want the channel to at least be a little bit self-sustaining, so I'm not just continually sort of pouring money into it. I've got enough hobbies that I already pour money into, so I'd like this one to be a little bit self-sustaining. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. So like I said, subscribers are really what I'm focused on right now as far as the channel's kind of concerned, so that's sort of the things I was looking for. So about from the videos, and live streams account for less than a quarter, maybe about a 20% of the subscribers that I've gotten on the channel, and of those about 25% of those, so a relatively small number of the live streams subscriptions are from the solo RPG series, which is the long-going series that we have on the channel. And on the video side, obviously that's where most of the subscribers come from. That's where most of the watchers are. A lot of people only watch the videos and don't really watch live streams. This might be good information if you just want sort of like inside baseball about YouTube. We're going to talk about quite a bit of that. And it deals with sort of my professional background, not necessarily as obviously a professional YouTuber, but as somebody who works in and around this space and other sort of online media advertising space. That's very much within my professional wheelhouse. So we can talk about a little bit of that and talk about my insights. We'll probably open it up for some questions. So if you guys have any questions about any of that stuff I go over, feel free to sort of like drop those in, and I'll try to address those and try to make sure that you guys understand sort of what I'm talking about, and if you need any clarification, because some of it's can be a little bit obtuse, little difficult to wrap your head around sometimes. So as I said, most of the subscribers come from videos, and most of those have come from the non-solo RPG videos. And that makes sense. Now, as I started to look at sort of, so that made me think, okay, when I'm thinking about what I want to do for the channel in the future, and what's good for the channel, and what seems to be the sort of areas that people want to focus in on, obviously it does seem like that most people are really here for that sort of D&D Dungeon Master, Game Master advice stuff, so obviously we want to talk a lot about that. Really want to push that to the forefront, because those are the things that sort of get the views, those are the things that get most of the comments, most of the engagement, things that people are most interested in. And I do think, as much as I love doing the solo RPG stream, and we're not cutting that out by any means, it is that is very much sort of like an entertainment space, and sort of the Dungeon Master, Game Master side of it is more infotainment, right? There's a little bit of education, there's a little bit of entertainment, kind of getting that. It's a lot of sort of blue skying, throwing ideas on the walls, just kind of checking things out, things that have worked for me, things that have worked. And let me know if the audio levels are doing okay. I did sort of add ducking, so I think that that's going to help sort of the audio balance that I've had with some of the background audio and some of the vocal mic pickups. So, because I know I've had some things in the past where people have been like, oh, well, the audio is too loud, or it's hard to sort of pull the voice out of the background noise. So let me know if that's going well. I can always turn down the audio if need be. But as far as I can tell, it seems to be working. But you guys tell me. So I now have a video sort of on the channel, which was my cantrips video, which I kind of put a cheeky title on. I didn't really think too much about it, and that's usually how it goes. And success kind of comes from weird places, and that is now a video that has more views on it than all of my solo RPG videos combined, which is not too surprising. Solo RPG is a niche within a niche within a niche within a niche, really. So there's already a very sort of small audience for that. So that's not too surprising. But it did make me, that does sort of like reinterpret, like, okay, now then maybe I should focus more on sorry, on sort of that video side, and more of the sort of advice and that sort of aspect. And solo RPGs, as I started to dig a little bit more into the analytics, it turns out that we'll see how far I can get. I'm gonna do my best, but my throat's pretty raw still. What was I saying? Where was I? Oh, what I was gonna say is that at this point, I've reached a point now where the solo RPGs, the streams themselves, actually do about as good in views and engagement as the videos do themselves. Which informs me that probably I should spend less time on the editing aspect of that. I should spend less time on the editing aspect of that, and instead try to put more of that energy towards the non-solo RPG content. Another thing that I looked at is that, you know, one of the things that I get is that those videos are a little bit too long, and I do think that sort of sweet spot is somewhere between 10 and 25 minutes. I feel like that seems to be the attention span of the audience, and kind of how they want to consume that consume that information and consume that content, and they don't really want the sort of longer videos. I enjoy making these sort of longer videos. They're a little bit more freeform, a little bit deeper, but also more noodly. And they can be, it's very streamer conscious. I don't write out a ton of sort of like bullet points that I'm trying to hit. And so I think a little bit more concise videos and shorter videos, which will help with the editing time that I do, will make things a little bit faster. Which is going to end up with more content while we get there. So I also want to talk about sort of like how people find the combat content. So about 80% of people finding the content is, of course, the YouTube algorithm, and that's suggesting content either through the homepage or through suggested videos, like while you're watching videos, when you get to the end of the video and it shows you different videos, or that sort of sidebar if you're watching that. And of that, about 72% of that 80% is the homepage. So again, and we kind of know this, if you know anything about sort of YouTube and its content creator, if you're not making it onto the homepage, then your content's not getting in front of people and people aren't clicking on it, because that's where the vast majority of views come from. So it doesn't come from playlists, and it certainly doesn't come from YouTube search. YouTube search used to be more of a thing back when, frankly, Google search used to be more of a thing. But Google search has gotten to the point where it's so poor, and YouTube search is so poor, that it's actually, you can search for a video and not find it, even though you know exactly what sort of video you're trying to find, a video you've already watched. It's very bad. So there's a lot of that. YouTube used to be more of a, just like Google used to be, Google search in general used to be more of a sort of like SEO, search engine optimization game. About having sort of the right keywords in the right places to be sort of picked up by people who were searching for things on the internet through Google and or YouTube. But that's not really the case anymore. Google search has basically self-cannibalized itself just to, and that's a lot of inside baseball sort of digital marketing and advertising ways. Like I said, that's sort of my professional background, about this sort of cannibalizing and sort of how Google as a search engine has become just utterly kind of useless to find relevant, high quality content, and that certainly has spilled over into YouTube search, and that's been a sort of a slow downhill march for almost 10 years now. So it's really been pretty bad. So knowing that there's nothing you could do from sort of that, and where they talk about it's not really about necessarily having the right description for a video or title for a video, because those things are used for search content and that's not as useful. So it's really more about, and we all know, the thumbnail game, and that's why, you know, the clickbait thumbnails work, because they get people to click on the videos. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I feel like, but I did want to sort of get that sort of out, at least talking about sort of what's kind of going on the channel. So yeah, so my idea is that I'm going to keep doing the solo RPG streams for sure. I'm going to have a lighter touch on the editing, so really I'm probably just going to be kind of cutting out any sort of breaks I take in it, and probably any sort of like audience engagement back and forth like we do here on the streams, because that's not going to show up for the people who are watching the videos later. So I'll just kind of cut that out and then just kind of leave the rest in as it is. So those videos will probably be a little bit longer, a little bit closer to what they are in the live streams, but the overall enjoyment of it's not going to be very different. And so I'll take that time and then I'll put it back sort of on the other videos. Now the thing is that I'll probably end up streaming more solo RPG videos sessions in between these sort of non-solo RPG sessions, because in these I'm going to try to focus on trying to hit a few different topics, like I'm going to try to do with this stream, so that way I can have a few shorter videos to kind of edit for the channel. So I think that's sort of the idea. Because right now I already have sort of a backlog of videos, so it's really about just having the time to edit those. So cutting down the editing for the solo RPG streams will kind of, I'm going to take that time that I gained there and try to throw it back into these other videos. So try to maybe do a little bit of a faster upload schedule. We'll see. I'm not promising anything. I still try to do kind of once a week generally, but you know, with the shorter videos, they may be easier to sort of punch up and get those done quicker. Especially now, I use DaVinci Resolve for my editing platform, which is free from the people who behind the Blackmagic cameras. Super great suite, fully professional editing deck, video editing deck. So if you are an aspiring YouTuber, I'd say check that out. It's a top quality. They make movies with it, so it's really great. It's free for the most part. There is a premium service that you can buy that has a few extra bells and whistles, but it is very much a functional, high quality editor that you can get for free. But they have finally integrated some hardware acceleration for the rendering of videos. So rendering videos used to take a very long time, but now it doesn't take very long, which is a nice change of pace. And now it takes probably, I don't know, like a quarter of the time that it used to, which is really nice. Now that doesn't solve YouTube being really, really slow to upload and render videos and process their videos. Like, that still takes forever, but what are you going to do? That's the platform. So yeah, that's sort of the plan. Is trying to figure out to try to push that more so I can do some shorter videos, maybe a little bit more production value, and still feel like I keep that quality up and improve that quality if at all possible. I'm kind of a bare bones editor already. It's not really my wheelhouse, so I'm still kind of learning it and trying to hold down a full-time job, plus doing all the extra stuff that kind of comes with YouTube and generally running and playing games outside of this. So I'm busy, is what I'm trying to say, but I'm doing my best. And so yeah, the only other thing that I do want to say about that before we kind of move on is that I do think that I want to experiment a little bit with maybe resurrecting my Twitch streaming. So I was originally streaming over on Twitch before I moved to YouTube, simply because that was sort of the primary platform for streaming. The thing is that it is just inundated with D&D streams, and you have a mob fighting for crumbs. There's just not a lot of viewership over there, so that's why I ended up on YouTube. There's just better viewership over here. The content gets in front of more people over here, more people enjoy it, more people seem to watch it, and they watch longer of it. So that's sort of the idea. But I thought about, oh, well, maybe if I'm going to have a little bit of free time, maybe I'll try to resurrect the Twitch stuff and try to maybe do some stream stuff that's not D&D related. Primarily sort of maybe some video game stuff. I have some people I know who do some video game streaming and things like that, and they enjoy it. It looks fun. I feel more comfortable now in streaming and my setup that I feel like I could probably do that. I don't know how much I'll have to add to it. We'll have to see. But I thought it might be a fun thing to just kind of jump in, just kind of try out something different, kind of see how, if it's fun, if people like it, if maybe that's a thing to do that people enjoy and I'll enjoy. So we might check that out. And then maybe, if that seems successful, find a way to, maybe if that'll be a second YouTube channel, because I don't want to put like those video game streams on this channel. So maybe I'll make it a second channel. It'll just be like video game stuff, or kind of as you see with a lot of other sort of YouTubers, where they have a second or third channel where they just kind of have everything else, just sort of random stuff in it. Maybe I'll have something like that, and we'll see. Kind of a variety kind of thing, potpourri kind of stuff. But yeah, that's everything about sort of that I wanted to talk about as far as channel and what's going on and all that stuff. So I'm just gonna take a second, get some tea, try to catch my breath. This is it's gonna be a hard stream. We'll see how far I get. Like I said, we're already about 20 minutes in, and but I took some medicine, so hopefully that should be kicking in. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask, and we'll address those. Whew. So I did play some D&D yesterday, and I'm going to play some... We played D&D, and then we kind of stopped. We were about to go into a big fight, and we have one of our people at the table was missing. We kind of want to make sure that we have everybody there. Everybody's supposed to be there next week, so we figured we'd save the big climactic battle for when everybody was there. So we're going to do that next time, and finally, we're finally getting around. It's a month late, but we're going to get around to our sort of... our white elephant. We decided to do a holiday white elephant with that group, that D&D group. And we're a month late, but we're going to finally do it. We just had, people in and out of town and scheduling differences, and I've been sick, and then somebody else was sick, and, well, here we are 5 weeks later, and we're finally going to get around to it. Alright, so let's talk about the D&D YouTube sucks, the death of D&D YouTube. We know that's all the news from the past week, so let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit. And primarily, if for some reason you're not caught up on this, I don't know how you haven't caught up on it at this point. This has pretty much been kicked off because we have two sort of larger channels in the community that are sort of retiring. That is How to Be a GM and Man Shorts. You have probably seen one, hopefully both of their contents, because both of them make quite good content. Or I suppose I should say, did make quite good content. So yeah, I wanted to talk about a little bit of it, and a lot of people have already talked about it, and I've watched some of those videos, and there are parts I agree with, and parts I disagree with, and I think that, kind of with my background in sort of that digital marketing advertising, I can talk a little bit more about it than I feel like maybe the average YouTuber might know about sort of the business side of those sorts of things. So I wanted to just kind of jump in and be like, alright, so what are people saying that sort of the issues are that with D&D YouTube and it's dying? So one of them is like, one of the ones that comes out a lot is quality content doesn't get views, and we're using heavy sort of air quotes around quality. This is one that a very specific YouTuber trots out very often, talking about when people criticize them for their content and covering sort of the drama side of D&D. And they talk about, and they say, oh, well, for every news video I do two sort of like GM, DM advice or whatever, campaign diaries or some some other form of quality content. And the truth is that person is just not being fully transparent. They are sort of cherry picking situations, because there are absolutely times where they do a lot of those drama videos sort of in a row. And that was one of the reasons I kind of stopped watching them. I haven't watched them for a while, but it is the same thing that they sort of trot out a lot. And there is definitely truth to that quality content, that if you make content about Dungeon Master advice, aid, those sorts of things, campaign diaries, whatever, that those don't get views. And that is that is true. That's never going to get as much view as news, especially sort of like drama, negative news, like that stuff. And we are so the algorithm plays us like fiddles, and people are drawn to sort of drama. I mean, all you have to do is look at something like any sort of reality TV shows, and how reality TV show just became this monster behemoth of entertainment, and has continued to do so for decades now, because it's cheap and easy to produce. It takes almost no time to do it, and you really just you don't have to do a lot of actual work to do it. you just kind of have to wait for something to happen and then you just talk about it. It's sort of the same way that I guess kind of news like works in general. Is you just kind of wait for things to report on, and there always seems to be something to report on. We have to. So the idea is that for a D&D space YouTube channel to be successful, they need to have that clickbait. They have to cover that drama because that's what gets views, especially anything that's got any sort of outrage and tied to it. That that's very much. If anybody's familiar with doom scrolling, this is exactly what we're talking about. That's stuff that sort of like taps into your brain chemistry and holds you into that feed and that negative loop, and then you feel terrible afterwards. So yeah, but it does work. It does keep your eyes glued on the screen, and that allows them to serve ads, and that allows Google to make money, and that allows the content creator to make money. So yeah, I mean that is that is sort of the big one. So that's quality content. Now, is that wrong? No. But do you want that to be what you're known for? And then how do you differentiate yourself from all the other people who are also doing the same thing? Who are also covering the same thing and saying the same, sound bites. They're talking about the same clips, doing the same sound bites, having the same points. How many videos did you, as a person, watch about the OGL controversy? Did you watch one? Did you watch a dozen? So if you want more quality content, we as an audience have to, unfortunately, not watch those drama videos. Which, I mean, I don't really. I mean, I do every once in a while, but the truth is I'm really burned out on that stuff. That sort of doom scrolling social media, and the world's just on fire and bad all the time. That's not really what I'm looking for out of my hobby time. I feel like I get enough of that just in general life, and so I'm really looking for more things that the people who are doing that sort of creative stuff. And so if you want to support the creators and you want them to create that work, you need to watch and share those and engage on those videos and watch less of that sort of drama stuff. That's a difficult ask for an entire audience to do. I understand that. It is the nature of the beast, but that's the only way to get around that, because they're definitely not gonna. It's either that or Google stops monetizing that content, which they're not gonna do because they like money. The next thing that kind of gets trotted out by a lot of people is that there's not really any money in D&D 2, and for people that make sort of, and this is not. None of these issues are specific to D&D. These are all just YouTube in general issues for content creators and people who make it their day job to be on YouTube. When you make YouTube your day job and you are dependent on Google as a company for your take-home pay and for making sure your bills get paid and that you and your family get fed, it's a dubious situation to be in. But they say that there's no money in D&D 2, and because you have to have these disparate amounts, these different areas in which to grant revenue, because no one bucket of revenue is large enough to basically, none of these buckets are large enough to keep you fed. None of them produce enough money. So that is ads through YouTube. There are affiliate links, sponsors, sales of like merch or products that the content creator makes, or licenses, and then audience RMR, that's recurrent monthly revenue. That's things like paid subs, Patreon memberships, coffee links, those sorts of things. So all those together end up with YouTuber as kind of goes in the pot of making money as a YouTube content creator, and really a content creator pretty much anywhere in the digital space, for the most part, especially for anybody who is produces their content to be displayed on a platform they don't own, which is most people. The only people I know that really kind of get around this is Dropout, which is the people that used to be the College Humor YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with Dropout, I assume you are because of Dimension 20, but if you're not, if you don't know sort of the backstory, College Humor YouTube channel went bankrupt. The people that were there consolidated as much as they could, and they opened up their own sort of streaming service, Dropout, which, by the way, is a great deal. It's only $6 a month. Amazing content that's on there, not just the Dimension 20 stuff, even though that is worth the price of admission at all. They have a bunch of other stuff. No, it's not paid. They didn't ask me to say anything about it. It's just something that I watch, and I think that they do a great job, and I've been watching College Humor for a very long time. And I think that they treat their people right. They make sure they get paid, and they are in control of their own, of all parts of that process. They're not, YouTube's not taking 50% of that monthly subscription. They get all of that, and they make sure that their people get paid. And they've been wildly successful at this thing. And they are wildly successful at a lower price than basically any other streaming service. But that's enough about that. So, and then sometimes YouTubers will be like, well, the majority of my cash actually comes from advertising on the YouTube videos, which I think that's a pretty dubious claim. Considering the amount of people who have ad blockers anymore, I can't imagine, especially in the DnD YouTube universe, I can't imagine that's true. I can't imagine that's truly true. Or else we wouldn't be spending all this time with the sponsorships and the affiliate links and creating our own merch and products to sell and doing the Patreon, always pushing everything else other than watch more videos. So I don't think that's true. I do think that's true for YouTube overall, especially for those larger content creators. Especially if you're looking at somebody who's at the very top. You're talking about somebody who's like a Mr. Beast, and we can kind of talk about why most of their actual revenue probably does come from the ads that are run on those videos. Primarily, that's because of the targeting of their audience. So their audience is children, unfortunately, and they make content. People, PewDiePie, before he left the game, Mr. Beast, Ludwig, all those. We're talking about like the top of people. 100% their content is focused on children. That's because a couple of reasons. Children have tons of free time. They have a lot of free time to watch a lot of free content on YouTube. And two, children, it gets kind of dumb. Most kids probably don't have ad blockers installed on their browsers, and whether they're watching on the phone or through the app natively or through a browser or whatever, they probably don't have an ad blocker, so they're seeing all the ads too. And we do know one of the things that if anybody's spent any time around children, whether they're your own or somebody else's, you'll know that kids will watch the same thing over and 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 over again. And so if they find that one sort of Mr. Beast video, they'll watch it 20 times, even if it's like 45 minutes long. They'll watch it over and over and over again. They'll watch it back to back over and over again. And so that I understand, like, how that becomes a large portion of their income. But for D&D tubers, I can't imagine that's truly the case for most. Either that, or they're just not making a lot of money through the other means, which is not that the ads are making a ton of money. It's that the other buckets are not making much money. So that would make sense why we see them, a lot of D&D YouTubers really heavily promote all that other stuff. You go and look at the average, let's say, popular D&D YouTuber sort of description, and it's just like, 20 affiliate links down there about things? Yeah, I mean, and then their Patreon, and then their merch, and then their link for whatever their sponsorship they have for that video, and all that stuff. The other issue that kind of comes up is that people don't watch from the subscription page; they watch from the home page, which is true. I mean, we unfortunately have reached a point, and I think this is definitely a generational turnover. I feel like, for the most part, is I feel like people who are a little bit older, like myself and even older, we appreciated being able to control the content that gets fed to us. So I pretty much watch YouTube specifically from the subscription feed unless I'm looking for videos not by people I already subscribed to. Like if I'm looking for new content, that's when I'm on the homepage. But if I'm looking for content from people I already follow, I go to my subscription feed and look through that. But that is a generational turnover, and what becomes normalized for them, especially younger generations, as they move into being sort of the primary target audience for a lot of advertising and disposable income, is that you have people that come from Instagram Reels, that come from TikTok, that come from those sorts of things where even later stage, like more modern Instagram and even Facebook, even though nobody young uses Facebook, is that, or Twitter, is that you're not in control of the feed, right? The feed just gives you stuff, gives you the content to consume, so you're not actually in charge. There's the dubious claim that whether you like or don't like what you watch and what you skip informs the algorithm in a way, but that's all very black box. That's all sort of behind the curtain, so we don't really know the sort of truth of that is the thing. We don't really know that. That's what they tell us, but I can tell you, looking at my YouTube home recommendations, is that there is a certain type of video that I always tell YouTube that I don't want that recommended to me. Does not stop the flood of videos like that being recommended to me. Is it my entire recommendation? No. But pretty much every time I open up the YouTube homepage, more times than not, I'll say that. More times than not, a video of that type is being recommended to me. Even though I tell it I do not want it recommended to me. So, the unfortunate thing is that even videos, usually, the way that a lot of content creators kind of talk about how the YouTube recommendation platform works. We talked about how it's important that you're on the homepage. So it's important that you're on the homepage. But if you see a video and you're like, I want to watch that video, but I'm not going to watch it right now, that tells the algorithm, oh, you must not be interested in this person's content. Which I think for smaller channels, that can be true. I think that's true for me. Is that I think that there are videos on my channel that have randomly gotten spikes of more viewership, and they are not significantly different than some of the other content that's on my channel. So I know that it's just been on the homepage at a time when I guess there wasn't a lot of competitive other stuff that was on the home pages of people that seemed to be sort of that target audience area. So it got recommended to more people clicked on it, more people watched it, more people watch it, it gets and engage with it, it gets recommended to other people. But the inverse is actually true for really big YouTubers, because I'm thinking about a very specific instance that happened in this past week where I had a YouTuber that I watched sometimes, but I'm not subscribed to, and their new video kind of jumped into my feed, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. But it kept getting recommended to me multiple times a day for the better part of a week. And I'm like, so that doesn't always hold water. It definitely depends on sort of the size of your channel, how much sort of channel inertia your channel has. If you are, for big channels, they can just sit on the homepage, and I'll get all sorts of wild stuff sent to me on my homepage, and I think we all do. They're like, I have no idea why this is being recommended to me, or you can be like, I have never watched, I I don't know. I'm trying to think of a big YouTuber. There's a Two Brothers YouTube channel where they do like Nerf guns and stuff like that. I went through a time where those were recommended heavily to me, and I'm like, I have no idea why I'm having these things recommended to me. Where it's just like these kids running around their house shooting their parents who are in like Halloween costumes with Nerf guns, and I'm like, what did I watch that made you think that I wanted to watch this? And it went through a long cycle. I went through probably over a week of having that stuff sort of recommended to me heavily, until even if I was saying, hey, I'm not actually interested in this content, I'm not clicking on this content, I don't want to watch this content, it's clearly for children, and I'm not interested in watching children shoot their parents with Nerf guns. But I'm sure, you know, there are lots of other kids who are interested in that. I just don't know why it's being sent to me. So there is some sort of you know, give and take with that. So there is, when everything's sort of like in that algorithm black box, it's a lot more convoluted than we try to interpret it as, or most people try to interpret it on. Oh, hey, what's going on? Oh, we're talking about sort of the D&D YouTube news a little bit, about man shorts and how to be a great GM, sort of retiring, and sort of about the state of YouTube, and trying to dig into that a little bit. Trying to give a little bit more of my expertise, sort of as background with digital marketing and advertising, and trying to talk about what that means. And then we're going to talk about plenty of other stuff, but that's what we're talking about right now. And so another thing that you're going to hear from a lot of content creators is that you got to focus your content around Dungeons and Dragons giveaways. And there is truth to that. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is there's a term for it. I don't remember what it is, but it is very much the Kleenex of TTRPGs. It is the one that people recognize. It has the brand recognition for people outside of the tabletop role-playing game space. So even when I'm at, say, work or out with friends who don't do tabletop gaming, they don't do any sort of board gaming or anything like that, and they're like, oh, what'd you do over the weekend? And I'll be like, oh, well, I went and played D&D with my friends. It doesn't matter that we were actually playing Pathfinder, or we were playing one of many other games that sometimes we do. But the easiest way to explain that to a person is being like, oh, we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. Just because that'll kind of give them, because most people sort of like outside input for that, it's going to be sort of media in some way. I think right now, for most people, that's Stranger Things for the most part. Maybe Critical Role, maybe Dimension 20, if they're on sort of that geeky, nerdy side of the internet still. They probably see some crossover with that, or they play Baldur's Gate or something like that. They're going to have that crossover and understand that. But for the average person, if you just tell them, oh, well, you know, Dungeons & Dragons, because you have to remember that Dungeons & Dragons is 50 years old and has had that sort of brand king name recognition for so long. And so, yeah, there is part of that. Now, do you have to talk about Dungeons & Dragons? No, there are successful channels in the TTRPG space that don't talk about D&D, like pretty much ever. They talk about other games, and they do fine. I mean, yeah, they're not throwing up, you know, millions of views on videos for sure, but nobody in sort of our hobby space even really has 1 million viewers. Even our biggest ones don't really have that sort of viewership. So I mean, you are already touching down into the YouTube. You're already a niche, and then if you're going to talk about something other than D&D, you're talking about really a niche within a niche. So you're really sort of funneling down to a relatively small audience. So yeah, I mean, sure, if you're trying to be a YouTube multi-million-dollar person, you're going to have to talk about D&D. Now, if you're not that concerned about it, then you don't have to talk about D&D. You should talk about whatever games you're playing, whatever games you want to play, whatever sort of inspires you to make content. For sure. Oh, yeah. Do I mean the shifting content to keep relevant is terrible, but when you use YouTube as a job, you have to sometimes. Yeah, we're talking about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's when you start chasing the algorithm, it becomes sort of an issue. You want to use Pathfinder for solo play? Ooh, you can absolutely do it. I think, as somebody who's done plenty of solo play, and I think other people who have done solo play usually would advise, if you want to do solo play, to use a lighter system, just because it's easier to handle. And there's nothing wrong with Pathfinder. Like Pathfinder just fine, but it does have it's a much more crunchy system, which means there's a lot more time that you'll be spending messing with the mechanics of the game than necessarily furthering the story of the game, if that makes sense. I think. But yeah, I mean, you can try it out for Pathfinder. I've done a little bit of Starfinder with it. I don't think I've tried doing Pathfinder. I don't think I would ever try to do Pathfinder. I don't think I have enough system mastery that I would feel comfortable, that I would feel like I would be able to do it fast enough. But if you have that system mastery, go for it. So yeah, you have to focus that content around Dungeons and Dragons to get the views. So yeah, if you're trying to perpetually grow your channel, you're gonna have to get through D&D. Though I think we've reached a point of saturation now. I think we're over the peak for Dungeons and Dragons. And when I was looking at Google Trends recently, that does seem to be sort of the fact that I can see as far as search trends for Dungeons and Dragons. It does seem like we've sort of gone over the peak right now. Now, that peak also, you have to take into account that, especially for search trends, that deals with stuff like the OGL scandal, which there was a gigantic spike in people searching Dungeons and Dragons about that during that time period. So that 2023 to early 2024 area where WotC was tripping every week over their own feet into some sort of controversy. Yeah, we saw a huge spike, but we're seeing that sort of kind of come down now. So I'm thinking that maybe we're kind of over that, and I think that also kind of goes with I know myself, and I know a number of other people have been very sort of lukewarm on the changes that have come with 2024. That they're like, yeah, they've made some changes, some are good, some are not so good, but effectively this isn't really that much different than 5e already was. And so it's like, is it really worth 3 new sets of books plus all the other extra books? Maybe not. Like I'm still playing. I mean, technically, I'm still in all my campaigns. I'm still playing a 5e character because that's we already had ongoing campaigns, and we haven't switched over. And in one of them, I'm playing an artificer, so there's not even rules for it yet. So. And the other one they've changed. I'm playing a ranger in a different campaign, and they've already changed so much of how the rangers, because this is a Beastmaster Ranger, that was already heavily modified for 5e anyways, because the Beastmaster Ranger sucks. But the new 2024 one, with it being this weird sort of like spirit, fae, creature companion, that's much closer to like what the late stage 5e Drake Warden is a little. It would be, I think, difficult to kind of port that over, really. Oh, you think 1E is surprisingly good for solo play Pathfinder? Because you can make strong characters? Yeah, I mean... they did sell the D&D rights to a gambling company. Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely gonna make some sort of gacha game with it for phones. They're gonna do all that stuff. And that's an understanding of Hasbro sort of from a business side, is that the D&D doesn't make a ton of money, but the D&D brand is highly monetizable. That's how Hasbro sees that. And by, you know, the chain of command, that's how WotC sees it now too. Which is very different from how D&D was purchased by WotC to begin with. But that's D&D history, and we're not going to get too much into that. But yeah, they see... it's like Pokemon. It's like the Pokemon games don't actually make that much money, but all the things you can license Pokemon on makes a ton of money, and they want that for D&D. Look, if they could sell you plushies of all the Monster Manual characters, they do it like that. If they thought there was a collectible card game they could sell for D&D, that I guess is not Magic the Gathering, even though now we've seen that cross-pollination already. But anything that they can throw D&D brand on. The truth is that I don't think the D&D brand is as strong as they think it is. I don't think that the what lives with it under the D&D brand umbrella, where you don't have standout characters like an Eevee, like a Pikachu, like a lot of other sort of, like something like Pokemon, where it's like, I know these hundreds of very specific Pokemon, and I have my favorite one. Everyone has their things. D&D doesn't really have that. That's not how the game works. So they don't have to be like, oh, well, I love this one. There's nobody that's walking around usually that's like, I love beholders. I love all beholders. I buy beholder everything. That's not really a thing. Yeah, it is sort of a niche brand, for sure. Hasbro tried to make D&D Warhammer new rules every other year that you have no choice but to buy the books. Yeah. There's an old, I think it's John S. Peters, who has the quote about, and his sort of like history about D&D is that one of the things that was a fault, hurt TSR a lot, is that TSR thought it was in the business of publishing a game, but really they were in the business of publishing books, and those are two different businesses. But the thing is that one of the things I think that we're not thinking about is that I don't think they want us to buy books at all. They want to fully wall in their garden. They want to have a fully walled in garden. They want that D&D Beyond, tabletop, microtransaction for aesthetics for your PC characters. You play on the virtual tabletop. And they basically want to make a really, really bad version of a turn-based tactics game. Video game. They want to make a really, really bad version of that. That is the end goal that I foresee for D&D. That is where they're trying to get to. Where you have to pay a monthly fee to get in. You have to pay for all the content in that in addition to the monthly fee you're paying. And you have to buy... you'll have to probably buy slots for how many PC models you have. You'll have to buy all the monster digital minis. You'll have to buy all the extra little aesthetics you want to do to them. They're going to have the custom dice that they already have. They're going to have custom spell effects that you're going to pay for. Like they're going to nickel and they're going to set this up in an ecosystem in which they can nickel and dime everything within it. And by doing so, they will kill the brand. They will kill the game by doing that. Because people will be like, this is incredibly expensive. Now I have to play it on the computer. Now I'm playing it at home with my friends online rather than in person with people. Which, I mean, there are people that do that already, but I do think that most people I've ever talked to about D&D talk about, and it's definitely been my experience, that there is a night and day difference between playing online with people and playing in person with people, and that playing online with people cannot hold a candle to playing in person with somebody, with a group of people, to sitting around a table and just having fun with your friends. Like the internet cannot recreate that very well. As we saw sort of like during the pandemic and everybody was socially distanced, that was a thing that people lacked. That was the thing people were hungry for. It's like, I want to just be in the room and talk with my friends. Yeah, Warhammer seems to be losing ground. Well, yeah, Warhammer's a weird beast. I don't know enough about Games Workshop other than their licensing. I do know about their licensing. And it was very interesting to see their licensing, in which there has always been this sort of business acumen to be like, you need to be very, very selective about who you give the license of your brand out to, because if they do a bad job, it will hurt your brand ownership. And then Warhammer's like, but what if we just like literally gave it to whoever? And that's why we have a ton of kind of bad Warhammer stuff that's just out floating around that's Warhammer branded stuff, whether that's books or video games and all sorts of other products and branded merch and all that stuff. But it worked out for them. I mean, they made a bunch of money off of it. So it's hard to argue with that. But Warhammer has never been a cheap hobby for anybody to be in. And that people who are Warhammer fanatics, they'll spend the money apparently. Oh, you think it's a 3D printer thing? Yeah, I could see that. I think it is hard to argue with 3D printing. Like, if I could just print them out for myself, I don't have to pay their exorbitant miniature costs. That is true. Warhammer miniatures are wildly expensive. But let's circle back. Let's get back on the sort of YouTube bandwagon. So, right, you gotta use the Dungeons & Dragons name if you're trying to grow that viewership, if you're trying to grow your channel, if you're in that sort of capitalism, and not derogatory, just normal capitalism, this idea that you always have to be growing. If you're not growing, you're dying, so you always need to be growing. There's no equilibrium. There's never going to be just a point you hit where everything will be okay. The other thing is the negative appeals and titles and thumbnails that you have to go with outrage, that you have to be like, oh, this thing sucks. It's the worst thing. This is the D&D killer. This is, WotC just destroyed D&D, or, you know, all those sort of negative things, because those are what get views. Yeah, outrage always gets views. That's why we have the old news thing that says, if it bleeds, it leads. Right? People, it's very funny to, in a world in which you have fictional shows that can't show graphic violence, but the news can often show graphic violence or just people dying on it. And you're like, but that's like real people. And that's like real violence. But we can't have make-believe violence? Like, how are those two things not... How are we judging those two things? So, yeah, I mean, negative appeals are always going to do that. So, but for a lot of these for a lot of people that are in the content creation game, and you talk about seeing somebody like... I'm thought about sort of some of the videos I've watched recently from, like, Bob Worldbuilder, where he talks about, like, oh, I want my... And every YouTuber kind of goes through this. They go through, oh, we want to be more positive on the channel. Because they get stuck in that negative appeal feedback loop in which everything just looks like everything's crappy all the time. And that takes a mental toll on you as a creator. When you have to focus all your energies all the time about, like, oh, everything's bad. And you have to do that from a business sense to be like, well, this is how I make more money. And the way to do that is by focusing on the negative stuff, because the positive stuff just doesn't get as much. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't get less. So, like I said, sort of with my background is that negative connotations tend to get the most attention, but positive connotations also get good influence, or get good sort of engagement. What you don't want is a neutral, because neutral doesn't typically get any. So if you're not like, if you just kind of state things sort of matter-of-factly, those tend to not do very well. There's an idea sort of in marketing that people truly make choices. All the choices that we make is truly made from an emotional standpoint. And everything that we do to sell you on that using sort of like logos, using sort of like facts and rationale, is a way to get our brains to rationalize being okay with making the emotional decision. And that's very sort of like inside baseball, like marketing psychology. That's why you see car commercials that are always about like family, or about being sexy in the car, or about being, you know, living your best life. It's not like, this car go fast, this car nice. because those don't sell cars. What sells cars is how you're supposed to feel when you're in the car. And so then being like, oh, but also you should know that like it's won awards and it's got a great safety rating and it gets good gas mileage, and you're like, oh, and also it's just a good quality car. Okay, then yeah, then I feel okay about buying it. Those are sort of the steps. Yeah, the games are becoming more popular over the last few years. Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard. There hasn't been a good... There hasn't been like one specific game that's been able to sort of dethrone D&D. And the closest we sort of came to that was Pathfinder over 4th edition D&D. That's sort of the closest we've come to that. And at which point there was a time in which Pathfinder was arguably, because we don't know true 100% sales data, but as far as we can tell, was actually at one point outselling D&D 4th edition. But it's going to be hard to dethrone the king, because the king, right, is the face of the entire hobby, which is a little bit different. It makes it really, really hard to push that off the hill. Let's see, so we talked about our negative appeals. So negative appeals, in addition to sort of getting people to click on things, it also breeds comment, which is engagement, and engagement shows interest in a video. And so when an engagement shows interest in a video, the algorithm says, hey, people are interested in this video. This must be a good quality video because people are engaging with it. So we're going to heavily promote it more to other people. Now the thing is that the algorithm's real dum-dum. It doesn't understand context. It doesn't understand it doesn't have any sort of human faculties. So it doesn't understand you can make a terrible video in which you just sort of pop off and you say a whole bunch of crappy hot takes that everybody runs the comments to tell you how you're wrong and stupid and you're awful. And that video will keep getting promoted because the algorithm goes, oh, a lot of people are engaging on this. Even if it's a ton of thumbs down, the algorithm doesn't care about that. You care about the comments and whether people are thumbs up and thumbs downing, because that means that more people are engaging with it. Which means more people are watching longer amounts of it, which means there's more ads they can show. So they're going to show that in front of other people because they want more people to watch it so they can get more ad revenue. Because even though ad revenue is a fraction of how most content creators make their money, it is a massive portion of how Google makes its money, especially YouTube. This is how YouTube makes its money. And there's always the cases where it's like, oh, well, YouTube is really struggling to make money, or YouTube loses money. And it's like, if that was true, Google has a long history of just killing off products that are not profitable. They would, if they thought that YouTube was not worth keeping around, we wouldn't have YouTube, for sure. They would 1000% kill it. YouTube is just housing the media, all the videos for YouTube, is an incredibly expensive endeavor. So you know that they are making bucket loads of cash. You know that they are certainly breaking even on it. They're doing more than breaking even on it. But they always want to make more money, and they always want to cut costs. Because that's how a big company runs. So yeah, I mean, that is the reason we see negative videos, is because negative videos, more people click on them, more people watch them, more people engage with them. So the only way to combat that as an audience member, as a consumer of YouTube content, is to not watch those videos, or if you're going to watch the videos, at least not watch the ads on them. Not comment on it, and not even thumbs down it. Because even thumbs downing something is engaging with the content. So the best thing you can do is not watch it at all, or if you see it, jump in your recommendations, click on the little 3 dots to the side and be like, don't recommend this video to me ever again. and then, or even go to the channel, depending on what channel it is. I mean, if it's a YouTube creator you follow and watch, you don't want to go do this. But for some, random video, be like, don't recommend this channel's videos to me. Because unfortunately, the way that capitalism works in general as a system is that negative reinforcement is really the way that you make change. And so you have to do the old in this way, because it's a free service, so it's a little weird, but do the old vote with your wallet kind of thing. You have to be like, I'm not going to give you money because I don't believe in the content that you're providing is good content for me. Well, you got to think, which is more important, upward growth or sustainable viewership to keep going? Though the CSI shows don't kill in the ratings, there's enough people to continuously. Well, CSI shows are a little bit different. Because broadcast television, the one thing that they're angling for in broadcast television always is syndication. Syndication is where the show makes money. Friends made money when it was live being produced on TV, but I guarantee you it's made a lot more money since it's been in syndication. Because it's now been in syndication decades. And those people are still making money off that show. You have to have, is it 6 seasons to get syndication? I can't remember. The rules around syndication are very interesting. Broadcast television in general. The weird rules around broadcast television can tell you why broadcast television ultimately has found its downfall. Even though we're kind of going back to it. It is cyclical, I suppose. Because that's basically what anything that like Freevee or Tubi or Zumo or any of those sort of free television apps are. I mean, that's essentially just broadcast television again. Another thing that a lot of content creators talk about is that D&D and WotC and Hasbro business practices suck. And that it makes it unmotivating to keep giving them publicity and this money. And yeah, I do think so. I don't really want to shine a lot of light on D&D and WotC and Hasbro, mainly over the wild amount of bad decisions they made within the last 5 years. Really, just a lot of real bad decisions, a lot of very business, money motivated decisions, and a lot of short-term decisions, not long-term decisions. So yeah, I can understand not wanting to promote that, but at the same time, you say that, there are content creators that will say that, but at the same time, they also know, just like we talked about earlier, covering all the drama with that is a net positive for people who are trying to make money as D&D YouTuber. So you can talk about how you don't want to cover that all day, but the truth is that you're gonna cover it because that's what makes money for you. So unless you are willing to not make money off of it. So what you're complaining about is that you feel like you have to do that to make money. Which is, or what you're complaining about is not that you need that to make money, you need that to make the most amount of money possible. So you are choosing money over the content that you want to make. And that's what it comes down to. And so I think that's what it comes down to for most YouTubers, is that at some point you get to a point where you have to make a decision about the content that you produce. Am I producing content because I want to, it's fun, I enjoy doing it, I'm passionate about it? Or do I produce it because I need to make rent, and this is my job? And I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't getting paid. And that's that sort of like, that's that crossroads that you reach as a content creator, where you're like, which path are you going to go? Are you going to go the starving artist path, where you get passion out of the things that you do, you feel strongly about it, you get a sense of self-worth out of the act of creation, about making this thing, about sharing this, and about building that community? Or are you like, I'm trying to get a paycheck? And that's not to say that going after the paycheck is wrong. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I feel like as an audience member, as a viewer of a lot of YouTube content, once I see somebody make that split, I have to make a decision about whether I want to keep watching their videos or not. Is this going to go in a direction? Because I find out for most content creators, if they make this decision, they go this way, and I am not enthralled with their content that makes them the most amount of money, that I will start to not like their channel, and I will unsubscribe and I will stop watching them. That's happened with me with a lot of content creators over the years. Be like, oh, well, you changed the style of content you decided to focus on this thing. You've gotten to the point where you're always going to be chasing the algorithm. You're always chasing this bleeding news, all the terrible drama, all that stuff. Having those drama channels and all that stuff, and all this sort of negative ball of energy, which for me as a viewer impacts my life if I'm consuming that. So I'm like, I don't want to have more of that. I feel like the real world gives me enough of that already. I don't want it in my D&D hobby, or whatever YouTube I'm watching, whatever corner of YouTube I'm in. I don't want it in my entertainment side, because I already have to deal with enough of that in my real life. So I'm going to hang out for a little bit. I'm going to see if you course correct that content, and if you don't, I'm going to leave, and I'll do what I said. I'll hit those 3 dots and be like, hey, don't recommend this channel to me anymore. I don't want to watch videos by this person, because they have chosen a path that I don't want to follow. And so that's what you do. That is part of D&D, or not D&D, YouTube growth in general. If you want to grow your channel, that means bringing new people in. And you see this with like music artists, any sort of content or artistic endeavor, anything like that. There'll be people they'll be like, oh, well, I don't like this musician's new album, because they're going in a different direction, and that's bringing in new fans that otherwise weren't core fans from their previous works. But also that leaves people who are like, I was a fan of this style of music you were making, and now you're no longer making that style of music. And that's when you get things like, oh, well, they sold out, or I mean, there's other things that goes into that, but also it's like, oh, well, they don't do what they used to do, so I don't like what they are, so I don't listen to their music anymore. That happens with any sort of content that you create that has an audience. Is that if you deviate from that core audience to bring in new audience, to grow your audience in general, is that there's always going to be a bottom of the funnel that has a trickle out of people. That's always going to happen. And that's not bad. But content creators realize that. I feel like people who are consumers of content don't always understand that. So now you do, I guess. Is that it's okay to just be like, well, they don't make the content I want anymore. That's okay. They moved on to something else. I'll find somebody else. And you'll find somebody else. And if there's enough of that core audience that gets leaked out, there'll be another content creator that sees that and jumps on it, and you'll find a new person. Or if your interests are so niche, there won't be somebody who steps in to get that, to fill that. But that for you might be an opportunity. You'd be like, hey, they weren't making this content. They don't make this sort of content anymore, and I can't find anybody else who's making that sort of content. What if I made that content? What if I was the person who did that? And things. That's sort of one of the things that kind of led me to doing my solo RPG series, is because there's a lot of solo RPG stuff out there, but most of them are not very long episodes. Most of them are really, really short. They have a lot of hard editing. Some of them just like play the session and then basically make a narrative transcript of it, and then it's just kind of like an audiobook, a slow audiobook of sessions. And I was like, well, what if I just like showed most of it? Showed basically like all the nitty gritty and showed the tools that I use and do that. And there are people who like that, there are people who don't like that. But I enjoy doing it, and that's what's important to me. Because when I'm at that cross section, I was like, I have a day job, and I don't want to make YouTube my day job. Because I feel like every time that I see YouTubers having candid conversations about their platforming about their job, they're like, I love my job, but also I hate my job. And I hate the things that sometimes I have to do, the hoops I have to jump through to do the thing that I love, or it becomes a thing that I resent because now I have to do it. And that's the difference between having a hobby or a career on something. And for me, I was like, well, I always want D&D to sort of be my hobby. I don't ever really want it to be my day job. Like if there was the right sort of confluence of the planets, everything, all the stars aligned, sure, maybe if I was without really trying, making money hand over fist doing it, which is almost impossible. Sure, maybe I'd consider it for a little bit, but I would never be like, well, I have to do this for the rest of my life. I would, because I don't want that. I don't want that pressure on it. I already, as somebody who has made content professionally, worked in sort of like a content mill to make professional content on a schedule all the time, regardless of about topics and subjects in which I am not passionate about. It's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world. It can still be fun, but it is a job. Like, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't getting paid for it. And so I don't want D&D to become that for me. I don't want tabletop role-playing games to become that for me, because I get such a huge amount of joy, and I have such a passion for it that I don't want that to be diminished just for the sake of filthy lucre. I don't want it to sell that out for, I think, any amount of money. But they say everybody's got their price. I just don't know what mine is. But it's clearly not what I'm at right now, which is a fat $0 right now. I don't make any money off of this. I just do it because I like it. Let's see. I think that's most of the stuff. I wanted to talk about this. Let's see if there's anything else in my notes. But I think that is most of what I wanted to talk about. Okay, get that off my chest. And I think it's helpful to have sort of those a slightly different perspective as somebody who has a long background in sort of the business side of things that are around YouTube and digital marketing and advertising and how that stuff works. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I felt like I could ever do for happiness and to get around it is don't be a part of the machine that feeds that negativity, that feeds that. If you see things that you don't like about the platform or about what your creators are doing, don't feed them the money, which means not watching the videos, which means certainly not, or if you're going to watch the videos, don't watch the ads, don't do engagement, don't do thumbs up and thumbs down, don't do that stuff. It's just if you want the content, if you want that one kernel of goodness that's in an ocean of, terrible content that you don't want, it's okay to go try to pick that out. Just try to avoid giving any amount of incentive to both the creator and Google for that content. That's the biggest thing you can do to sort of avoid that. Yeah, we talked about this. I think we talked about. Oh, one of the things we didn't talk about. I do want to talk about this. So we did talk a little bit about sort of that different thing. Something happens when you decide to make YouTube your full-time job. And there's something that's very specific about being a content creator on YouTube, and that is that you make content on one or more platforms owned and operated by a different business entity that you have no control over. And that's what puts YouTubers in such a consistently precarious situation. And you have to think about it. It's no different than trying to make a career selling handmade goods, but you only sell them on Etsy or Amazon. Not even both of them, just one of them. So you imagine that. Let's say that I make, what have I got next to me? I don't have any in me. Here, let's say that I make these little bags. I don't know why. They're handmade. Let's say it's a handmade dice bag with like nice stitching and some sort of embroidered thing on it, whatever. I make dice bags and I only sell them on Etsy. And you're like, yeah, perfect. Tons of people do that. Now, imagine that same situation, but the search function of Etsy is basically non-existent. Which means if somebody's looking for those bags, they're not going to be able to find it. They're going to get tons of other bags, probably from, maybe in the Amazon would be a better comparison here. Say you sell these handmade bags on Amazon. Well, you go on Amazon, and again, assume the Amazon search function works worse than it already does. And you're like, I want a new dice bag. If you don't show up on that first sort of like splash screen where they're going to have the Amazon basics and the things that they're going to have things from like Paizo and D&D and like all the big brands, all the massive companies that sort of fall in that space. If you're not there, nobody will ever buy those bags. And that is essentially kind of how YouTube works. Because as the search functionality is basically awful, it doesn't work, which means that finding videos, like intentionally trying to find a video, is exceptionally hard to do on YouTube. Even like, you can go test this right now. Go try to search for something in YouTube and look at the terrible results it gives you and how few results it gets you. And then it just starts recommending you random videos that have nothing to do with your search query. It's real bad out there. So you imagine that, if that's how bad it is, that's how difficult it is to be successful on YouTube. That's why you have to do the clickbait. That's why you have to follow the drama. That's why you have to be big and bombastic and negative and drama-filled and all that stuff, is because for the slim chance that your video's gonna be on somebody's home screen and they'll see it and they'll click on it. Because that's the only way, right? I said at the beginning, 80% of my viewership, people who watch my videos, come from Google's algorithm. And less than 5% come from people who are actively searching for that type of content on YouTube. So Google, your platform is completely in control of what content creators get promoted, and who gets views, and who gets that advertising money. And by, supplementary effect, how those people make money, because nobody's gonna buy your merch, and nobody's gonna get your sponsorship deals, and nobody's gonna use your affiliate links if they're all in your video, and nobody's watching your video. So it's all comes down to whether somebody's going to watch your video or not. And you have incredibly little control over that as a content creator. It's insane. So when you're thinking about content creators who do it for a paycheck creators, they're not artists, they're not employees of Google. Functionally what they are commission-only salespeople for Google. They sell ads for Google using their content. That's how it works. Google doesn't care about the creators, because each individual creator, unless you are that top, like Mr. Beast level, like top tier, that top 1% of YouTubers, less 0.01% of YouTubers, the revenue that you generate as a content creator represents a droplet of water in an ocean of YouTube's total ad revenue. That's why the copyright rigmarole is such a pain in the butt for content creators, and they constantly just bend creators over the barrel, because on the off chance, from Google's perspective, on the off chance that the massive company that issuing this copyright takedown might, not even currently, but might run ads on their platform one day, they don't want to burn that bridge. They would rather lose the creator. That's how they deal with that. So yeah, I mean that's it. I could go down this more. I could talk about this for hours. I have talked about this with people professionally for many hours. And we could talk about it a lot more and talk about sort of like the back end, inside baseball, the backroom deals, all that stuff. But like I said, I'm trying not to focus on that negative stuff. So this was like the one video I feel like I've done about this thing. And hopefully it's going to be the one video I ever do about it. So let's move on to something a little bit cheerier, I think. So, oh no, I do want to talk about the second. Well, we talked about the second channel a little bit, but you will see like YouTubers who have been around for a very long time tend to have a second or third channel, and you'll notice that if they do that, they tend to upload on those second and third channels way more often. And you might go, well, that's weird. Why do they do that? Well, first is because of the analytics game. There's this issue that happens where if you put out a video on your main channel and it doesn't do as well as, that's why we have the top 10 video things that everybody hates, and it doesn't do as good or better than the previous video, that is basically YouTube internalizes that as, well, this channel's cap. This channel is over the hill. They're losing viewership. People don't want to watch this content anymore. So we're going to stop promoting it as much as we were. And that's sort of that long downhill slope is what we saw with things like Guy over How to Be a Great GM. Like that was that slow, and Man Shorts, that slow descent of viewership where each new video isn't doing as well. They hit their peak, and there was like the next video didn't do as well as the video before it, and so it gets promoted less, and so it becomes this death spiral of being like, okay, well, we're not going to promote the next video as much from them, and so of course that one doesn't get as much views, and so it doesn't make Google as much money. So they're like, all right, well, we're not going to promote that video, and so it just kind of this slow step downward spiral, death spiral of a channel. And that's exactly what happened to both of those channels. You can go look at their viewership numbers, and if you go look at their videos and look at it in chronological order, you'll see, big swells of numbers. You'll have the occasional video that does like really well, and one that does really not well. But overall, you'll see an upward and then downward trend. There's, like I said earlier, there's never an equilibrium point. It will always either be growing or dying, and there's no in between. All right, for sure, that's the last thing we're going to talk about. All right. Yeah, hopefully that was more than you probably ever wanted to know about YouTube and being a content creator and how this works. I would advise you guys, if you want to learn more about that, find those content creators who do speak candidly about their experience on the platform. There aren't that many of them. They are kind of hard to find. The one that I've always enjoyed, even though I don't think he's done one for this past year yet, is K-Bash, who is not a massive YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination, but he is one that usually once a year he does sort of like a roundup, and he'll do a sit-down like fireside chat where he talks about his experience on YouTube, things that have happened, what's happening with the platform, what's happened with him as a channel, and how that impacts him as a creator, and what he's done in the past to try to change things, what he wants to do in the future. So it's a really great resource if you can find YouTubers who are talking a live stream or a video where they talk, and they have to be talking candidly, because there are lots of people who talk about it and they'll put on a face and they won't talk about like any of the bad stuff that's happening with their channel. But he is one who kind of talks about the struggles of trying to be a professional content creator on this platform. So, all right. So I did want to give sort of like a send-off. Specifically, I watched lots of Man Short stuff. I've watched lots of Guy stuff, but I did want to. I want to give more credit. I'm not going to do a skit for main shorts, but I did think that I would do a send-off for Guy's channel to talk about sort of the kind of showcase the things that I have learned from him over the years, and things that I've internalized and helped to sort of improve my games, as well as sort of inspire me to create this sort of D&D TTRPG content. So I figured the thing that would be really salient to do, and the thing that I remember most pervasively in my mind is the thing that he really helped me on, was character creation questions, which are questions that you ask about your character when you're creating them, so you can create a more sort of fleshed out three-dimensional style character. And you can get makes it a little bit easier to understand like sort of who they are and where they're going before you get to the table, so you can kind of role play them a little bit better and understand, you know, their motivations and what they enjoy, and things that get them in trouble, and just kind of learn some basics about their personality so you can have that ready to go. I am going to take just a quick bio break, and then I'll be back and we're going to do that. We're going to do this sort of like who is my D&D character questions. So hold on tight. I'll be back in just a minute. All right, let's get on with it. So, like I said, we are going to talk about who is my D&D character. So this is my sort of homage to Guy over how to be a great GM. Just a little nice, like, sort of send off for his channel, and about taking things that I learned from his channel and changed it and sort of added my own spin on it. And so I just kind of want to share it with you, and just kind of finish that circle. Take something that I learned from somebody in the community. I took it, I made some changes to it. I have my own sort of set thing now, and now I share it to you. So hopefully you can take it, you'll find stuff out of it that you really like, and you can share it on. For whoever's down the line, share it with your friend. If you ever decide to start making content, share it with other people with your modifications. And overall, we all come together to improve the hobby as a whole. So let's jump into it. I'm going to pull this over so we can look at it. Hey, there we go. So, who is my D&D character? So, you're making a new character, a character creation. You want to kind of understand who this person is. You want some insight as to who they are, which I find extremely helpful. So that way, when I get to the table, I have like some idea of who this character is, rather than just a whole bunch of numbers on a character sheet. So, this is sort of the things that I've used to help me with that things, and like I said, it kind of comes from, I think Guy originally has like 6 questions. He had a video about it from I don't know how many years ago, but it was the one thing that, probably the thing that for me was the deepest root, or the thing that maybe turned me on the most to his channel at the time, and made me sort of enjoy his content and watch more of his content. So who is my D&D character? So I just built it out chronologically. What was life like as a child? And we talk about within that, what location were you born and grew up in, and where is that in proximity to, if this is a brand new D&D campaign, what is the proximity of that to the starting area for the campaign? Does it start in your hometown? Are you kind of from the area? Are you from the same nation or kingdom? Are you from the other side of the world? Are you from a different planet or a different plane of existence? Something like that. So trying to figure out proximity to where you are from the start of the campaign, which should inform sort of how much you know about the local area, which can be really helpful, as well as people you might know, history you might know, cultural and social norms, things like that you can do, and you can really kind of focus in. If you're a traveler from far across the sea, you might not know the local customs. Maybe you bow instead of shaking hands, so somebody reaches out their hand to you, and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, and all those sorts of things that sometimes we see characters in other media deal with when they are outsiders, and they can have that. You can build a character that has sort of that outsider perspective on what's going on, or you're local and you're like, look, I know the Smith, we grew up together, and I know everything about his family and his children and all that stuff. So that can kind of help you figure out where your character is in the world. Same way we talk about, who is your family, and parents and guardians, siblings, cousins, big family, small family, only child, raised by grandparents, raised by parents, dead parents, orphan. All these are totally different decisions you can make about your character and sort of the background, and those decisions you make will sort of interpret how you feel, how your character, the lens in which your character views the world, is what I should say. The lens, it determines the lens. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it straight, I promise. Understanding sort of that background, the familial aspect, and sort of going right next into socioeconomic caste and friendships is the lens in which they view the world. So understanding those elements about the character can give you a lot of insight as to how they see and interact with the world. And then also adding things like important childhood events and memories. It's up here on my shelf. I'm not going to pull it down, but Xanathar's Guide to Everything does have a nice sort of child-like life events kind of table and things like that you can roll on, or you can just make stuff up, or maybe you look at your ability scores and be like, oh, well, I've got a really low Constitution score, so maybe I was a sickly child or something like that, and those can bedridden. You can use those to inform how your character views the world. How do they think about when they see other sick children? When they see sick children, does that sort of pull at their heartstrings? Do they have that sort of empathy for it? Does that make them more likely? Are they more focused on being a healer, or making sure that they always carry around the spare healing potion or some item that allows them a periapt of health or something like that? Some sort of things like that. Are they somebody who takes vitamins and herbal teas and things to sort of try to ensure that they always stay healthy because they know what it's like to be really, really sick? Things like that. And then, same thing, what was it like growing up? Talking about your apprenticeship. So when you moved from being a child to being sort of somebody who's training to get into the workforce. And this is when you start looking at your background and you start thinking about, okay, as I was coming of age, moving out of a child into sort of those teenage years, into transitioning, making that march and transition from being a child to being an adult. You take a look at that and be like, okay, what was that like for you? Did you apprentice? If this is classic like guild style apprenticeship where you actually just go live with somebody else, and you know, maybe you were treated very well by your master, or maybe you were, or you know, did they work you really hard? Did they teach you anything? Maybe they just wanted the money and they didn't really teach you anything. And then thinking about coming of age stuff is like, well, think about, did your character have their first kiss, or the first time they had sex, or you know, their first girlfriend or boyfriend, or thinking about those sort of things. Was there a rite of passage, some sort of coming of age ceremony, like a bar mitzvah kind of thing? Did they have something like that? Was it a family thing? Was it is it like an official community thing? Was it anything at all? Was it maybe sort of just a small cake, or maybe you got a embroidered handkerchief, or who knows? And what did that mean for you, crossing that threshold between being a child and being an adult? And so those are the sort of things that can really, really get your brain to start to percolate about, okay, this really informs sort of how they feel the world, how they think about their background and the skills they've learned and the traits they have from that. Do they view that with favorably? Do they hate it and they never want to go back to it? How does that inform maybe how they deal with people with certain trades? All those sorts of things you can think about. It can be really interesting, give you a lot of sort of ammunition for your character, trying to decide who they are and how they feel about situations and how they interact with different factions and institutions and NPCs of different socioeconomic castes, of different jobs and trades, and people who work in the government, or people who are farmers, and all that sort of stuff. So it's giving you an idea to basically kind of primarily think about your background at this point that you've chosen for your character, and how that influenced how they view the world and how they interact with it. That's what all this is going to be. It's all about how they see the world and how they interact with the world and the people who live within it. So, what were you doing before you became an adventurer? So you went through your coming of age, you were an adult, and then usually there's some amount of adult time that happens between where you're kind of working a job and then you become an adventurer. So what were you doing before that? So what was that looking like? This can be a really fertile sort of ground to try to think about the places your character may have gone to before they became an adventurer, where they're from, things they may have picked up along the way. Again, kind of working with those background constraints, primarily in sort of like the traits which I guess in 2024 is primarily feats that you picked up. You can start thinking about, okay, these, if I took the skilled feat and I got these 3 skills, I kind of come up with ideas of how I was able to sort of learn those skills, being an adult in the world who was trained with this background. You can kind of start to think about that. Think about, you know, what job did you have? And again, using something like that life events table. So if you want to play a character that's maybe like a wizard who's getting into adventuring later in life, that classic sort of like white beard wizard, and you're like, well, this is actually just a quite senior person, so they're going to have a lot of life events, and something pretty drastic must have happened that instigated a shift from what they were doing before to being an adventurer at somebody who's sort of like at this age. So think about the things that may have happened to do that, and that leads right into the next question: why did you leave it all behind to become an adventurer? So you were doing it, you were doing the thing, you became an adult, you had your training, you were living life, then something happened, or a series of somethings happened that made whatever you were doing before not something you could do anymore. That was not something that you either could or wanted to do anymore. And the way that I usually try to frame this is, are you chasing after something, or are you running away from something? And that's the difference. So this could be, you know, there was some reason you had to leave town, you had to leave the community, you can't hold down the job anymore. There's something that you did that you lost your guild membership for some reason. Like you're blackballed from the guild or barred from it, and so now you can't be a smith or a mason or whatever you were before, a scribe, whatever it was, whatever your background is. So what happened there? And then you can, if you think about that, it's like, all right, let's say that we are a good example. Let's use Leah from our solo RPG. So why did she leave it all behind? So she was an academic. She was a researcher at a university, and then she got blackballed. Like their research got defunded, and she couldn't get hired. They don't really understand. They don't know why. They just know that that everybody who was basically involved with that research was immediately blackballed and kind of cast out of the university. And they all kind of disseminated and struggled to find other jobs. So for Leah, she's not running away from something, but she is chasing after that. She wants to understand. She got a cryptic message from somebody at the university. She wants to understand what happened. Like, why did this happen? Can I fix it? She enjoyed her life as sort of like a full-time academic in her ivory tower, and she wanted to do that. Wanted to be she's sort of like a dragon archaeologist, kind of. So she would love to go back to that. That's what she's trained in. That's what she spent most of her life doing. And she'd love to go back to it, but she has to figure out why their research got discredited and why she's not able to get a job with the university. She's not able to keep her position with the university. So she's chasing after something. And so that's sort of what led her to be an adventurer, because she had to find some other way to... something else to do to make a living, even though she's trained in this very specific thing to do. I also had some life events for her. She got sort of conscripted into a war that was happening, and she got injured in that war. She's a casualty of that war. She has a pretty nasty scar from it, and she's a smart cookie, so she worked in sort of like the logistics. She was in sort of like working in the baggage train for the fighting, and the baggage train got attacked and she got injured. So that's her short-term goal. Her general goal is being like, I'm trying to figure out what happened, why I can't be a researcher anymore. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Actually, that's not true. That's technically her long-term goal. Her actual short-term goal was trying to figure out who killed the librarian who had sent her the cryptic letter. Because he's dead, and she's trying to figure out why that guy's dead and why he sent her a letter. Even though it doesn't seem like it was actually from him. It seems like somebody was pretending to be him and sent him a letter. And they found his corpse too. So you have to watch the solo RPG to find out that whole story. Alright, so last thing that's kind of down here. How did you learn your class abilities as an adventurer? This is a fun one to think about. Okay, so I've done that, and then this was a nice thing. Leah started as a 0 level character, so we didn't really need to do that. But she had a bunch of Arcana sort of background skills and training, so it made it fundamentally easy that she had been working in a place where there were already lots of magic users and lots of magic items. So she's very familiar being around magic users and using magic items. So it felt really natural that she didn't have too much trouble trying to figure out how to cast spells, because she was already her research was already so closely related to magic already and the understanding of magic that it just made sense for her to be able to pick it up. But again, I also started her off as a 0 level character, so she learns it on the fly. She learns that magic on the fly. And then sort of what is your adventuring life like? So we talked about what are the long-term goals for your character. Well, the long-term character for Leah is obviously she wants to figure out how to go back to being an academic researcher. That's really what she wants to do, and figure out why her research got discredited. Hey, happy Saturday. How are you doing? We are talking about just some character creation questions right now. You kind of sort of flesh out your PC before you get to the table. So, you know, what is that character's long-term goal? So, for Leah's, for the solo RPG, hers is obviously she wants to go back to being an academic researcher. That's her passion. That's what she wants to do. So then, adventuring is stressful. How do you relax? How does your character relax? You know, what hobbies do they have? Do they play games? Do they like to party? What sort of vacations do they take? You can think about, hey, is your player character more of a mountain vacation person or more of a beach vacation person? Where do they like to go on vacations? Or do they want to go to like a different city and explore a different city and soak in the nightlife and do all that stuff? So trying to understand that will kind of give you an idea about sort of things that they want to do when they want to blow off steam, where they go, how they want to do that. And that helps you sort of work in. This can be especially helpful if you are playing in a campaign that's got a little bit more downtime in it, and you want to run some more downtime. Then now you have things for your character to have to want to do outside of just like I'm crafting items, or I'm working a business, or I'm just working a job, in between that sort of stuff. Yeah, one of the greatest interactions you've had with the player was them saying, I've done what I wanted. I have the money to live the life I want. I stayed for you all. Yeah, that's very sweet. That's very saccharine. Very touchy-feely. Yeah, the why of adventuring. You know, why are you adventuring? Who is your person, and why are they doing this wildly dangerous thing? Absolutely. Because adventuring is very dangerous. It's very stressful. You got to have a very good reason to be doing it. And then, so, trying to think about what they do in their downtime, and then what's one thing that constantly gets you in trouble? What is some sort of, this is extremely helpful, and definitely something you want to share with your dungeon master or game master, is one thing that constantly sort of like gets your character in trouble. Some sort of quirk, a character trait, some sort of flaw they have, some sort of things like they can't back down from testing a feat of strength, or a classic one's like they won't stand up to anybody talking badly about their friends, or if you disparage their family name, that's an issue. Maybe they're just a bad liar, right? They just can't lie. Like it's always written on their face, and that's the thing that always gets them in trouble. Maybe they're just trying to be polite, but it always seems like they're lying when they're just trying to be polite. and maybe that's what gets them in trouble. Those sorts of things. Maybe they're socially awkward. That gets them in trouble. They could be clumsy. They spill drinks on people. That gets them in trouble. Anything that's just sort of, you figure out something that's like, hey, what is something that you do, something that your character just kind of struggles with in their life? There's this constant thing that kind of comes up, and they try to avoid it as much as possible, but does have this tendency to sort of come up that where they flare. It's something that gets them in trouble all the time. You know, they could be, they might have some sort of addiction, whether that's drinking or gambling or kleptomania, like for a rogue. Like, they just can't not steal things. Like, they have to steal things. And the great thing is when you can take these two things and put them together, the thing that they do to relieve stress is also the thing that gets them in trouble. Which could be like partying. They're a big partier, but that's, you know, that can be really troublesome, right? They might spend all their money. They might, get too drunk or too high. They have issues with the law. They get into fights, and maybe they're an angry drunk. All that sort of stuff if you can put those two things together, it's this nice little powder keg of something that there's always some sort of thing that your character can do to spark off some sort of drama or tension in the game, even when nothing's happening. It's really nice. The lizard folk you played was obsessed with honor, but didn't understand the concept, so he kept getting social cues wrong. That's very funny. Yeah, I could definitely see that for a lizard folk, not understanding sort of the warm blood social norms, like mammal social norms kind of stuff. That's very interesting. Yeah, I think that's a very straight way to play lizard folk. It's fun every time you do it too. And then sort of down here, do you know one, and that should say or, not of more, one or more. There we go. One or more party members, and what's your relationship with those people? I feel like a lot of really good games start, and this is something that some RPGs, tabletop RPGs, do fundamentally as part of character creation. Is to be like, okay, this is your character, and then you basically look at somebody else at the table and be like, you decide that you know somebody else at the table. I think Traveler does this very well, where you choose somebody else at the table and you're like, we have this relationship. Both players have to agree on it, but you choose somebody else and be like, hey, we know each other. Are you cool with that? Yeah. This is how we know each other. Like, I did this thing for you, or you did this thing for me, or we did this thing together, and so that's how we know each other, and we have this history. And like, is that a positive association? Doesn't always have to be. You can be like, oh, well, we were rivals for a job, and they kind of washed out and didn't go well. That's more of a Traveler setup, but we were rivals for a job that washed out and set up, and maybe one or more people got killed because of that, and so you guys know each other and you have a relationship, but it's not necessarily a good one. So you might be more rivals than friends at that point, and so that can put some tension in the group, but it also gives you a reason to be like, well, whatever this person decides they want to do in whatever situation, I tend to take the opposite side, even if I agree with them, or maybe I begrudgingly agree with them, that's the right thing to do. And now you have that sort of intra-party communication and relationship that starts to build over time, where they're like, oh, well, the more I got to know the other character, the more my character became to respect them and to understand them, and start to realize that the bad blood we had in the past was just a thing that happened, and that's all it has to be. And now we're closer, and you have the rival to friends, or rival to lovers, kind of arc of those characters' relationships. So if you sit down at your table and you do that with other party members, you don't always have to do that, right? That's going to be determined on the DM of whether your characters are going to know each other beforehand or not. But it can be very helpful to have at least some of the party kind of already know other members of the party, even if they're not like fast friend blood brothers, just to have them be like, oh, well, I remember this person because we did this thing together, you know, like 2 years ago. It's like, I kind of know them. I mean, I know their name, but, you know, I haven't spent a lot of time with them, but I know that they're, you know, capable or whatever background you make for those characters. And then you ask your 6 WH questions, kind of flesh those out if you feel like you still need a little bit more. That's your who, what, when, where, why, and how. You think about, okay, adventuring is stressful. What's the hobby they do? I don't know. They let me think of a good hobby that they would do. Maybe they play darts. That's what they do. They're a big darts player. That's what your character does. Okay. How did they get into darts? Okay, when I start to think about my backstory and think about the people who are in that, oh, that's something they picked up when they were apprentice. They worked in a, let's say, like a general store kind of setup, and the guy who ran the general store just wasn't like playing darts and taught me how to play darts, and I came to love it, and now I like to play darts. That's it, and that gives you your character a little bit more. Now it's not just a thing they do, now it's tied to sort of like their backstory. Then you'd be like, oh, well, this person, you know, who was kind of I was an apprentice, so still relatively young kid, so there's kind of a father figure, sort of, an authority figure in my life, and they took the time to teach me how to do this, and so, you know, when we played darts together, I felt like we had a connection. And now I see playing darts with people as a way to make a connection with that person. And so now when your character invites somebody to play darts with them, it's because they want to get to know them better. And they won't play darts with somebody they don't like, unless they just want to gamble with them and just beat the pants off of them. 'Cause, assuming they're good at darts, then they do that. But otherwise, they're looking for an invitation to be like, okay, this is a way that I can get some alone time with this person, and we can have a conversation. I can get to learn them a little bit, learn more about them, and know them a little bit better. Right, and that's just a small little smidgen of something you can do with a backstory about a silly hobby, and that can really blossom into a defining feature of your character if you want it to be. And you can even spin it out. Like I said, they also gamble with it, so maybe that's the one thing that constantly gets you in trouble. If you're, instead of a pool shark, you're a dart shark, and you know that darts is an easy way for your character to make some quick cash, so you do that. Well, occasionally somebody's gonna catch you, and they're probably gonna start a bar fight with you. If they think that you're, sharking them. So then the last thing you do is just you sort of write it out for your dungeon master. Take all the answers you've gotten and kind of weave them into sort of like probably a chronological kind of narrative. It doesn't have to be like super purple prose, well written. It just kind of needs to be functional. Just kind of tell the dungeon master, hey, this is my character, this is a little bit about them and sort of their life up to this point, and sort of here's some of the defining people and events in that life and things that are important to them. Family members, friends, people I worked with, people who have died, things that have happened to me, ways that I've been injured, or other defining moments. And you have all that. The thing is that you want to keep it short form. You don't want to read, we know as players that we don't want to read some sort of 25-page world primer for a D&D campaign. And that's a two-way street, because just in the same way that your DM doesn't want to read 5 different players' 5-page backstories for every PC. Like, that's a lot of work. But at the same time, it's also really difficult as Dungeon Master when you get no background information about a character, because then it feels hard to sort of like weave them into the world to make them feel like they are a part of the world. And you want to find a way to sort of weave them in and keep them connected and be able to do that. And the last thing I put down here is that you need to try to leave plenty of open room in your backstory for your DM to be able to sort of add and edit elements of your backstory to make sure that the things that are in your backstory fit the campaign world. Because oftentimes as your player, you're making the backstory without that 25-page campaign primer about like everything that's going on in the world. So sometimes you don't have a lot of that information, and so you're like, well, you just kind of put holding stuff in here. You can be like, I grew up in a large city, and you can just kind of. Sometimes I'll just like leave that in brackets. Like, all right, DM, you tell me where a large city is in your game, and that'll be the place I'm from, I guess. And stuff like that. There's like, oh, and I joined this organization or an adventuring party. I don't know who the adventuring party is, and I don't know who the members of the adventuring party were beforehand, before I became this adventuring party. So I'll leave that up to you. Maybe I'll be like, well, I think there was a fighter in it, and there was probably a rogue in it, and there was probably a wizard in it, and there's probably a cleric in it, or whatever party members you want that you think are going to be important for your backstory. Be like, but I don't want to fully flesh those people out, because I want the DM to be able to have their say in it, as well as be able to surprise me as a player with that information at the table. Be like, hey, you see a big red dragonborn walks into the door, heavily armed and armored. This dragonborn walks through the door, and everybody kind of looks up, but your character specifically knows who this is. You call back and you're like, you know this person. You've adventured with this person before. This is part of your old adventuring party that disbanded years ago, and this is the first time you've seen them since then. And you're like, oh, all right. Well, that's something totally new for me. And now I know who this character is. And I'm like, all right, do I know their name? Okay. Yeah, write their name down and start taking notes on it and be like, okay, I'm going to have this interaction with this person then. This NPC. And that's a great way it gives the DM a lot of fodder for not just backstory, hijink stories, like stories that are built off of your backstory, but also as a way to tie your backstory to maybe adventure seeds, adventure things that kind of come from that aspect. So we're like, oh, well, I need some way to tell these, to tell the party about the next adventure they're going to go on. Well, let's look at their backstories. We haven't done anything with this character's backstory yet. Let me see what NPCs are in their backstory, and I'll just grab whatever seems like will be the most relatable one for that, and pick them and be like, hey, this is the person who shows up to tell you about the next adventure plot hook. And it's a really easy way. And then for the player character, it feels like that player character is rooted in the world because somebody from their backstory is talking about things that are happening in the world that is, prescient to the adventure that's about to happen, about the goings on of things in the world. And so your character feels very grounded in the world. Like, oh yes, this is definitely a place where it makes sense that my character has grown up and lives and functions within this world. Like this feels like this is their home, like they belong to here, and the things that are in this world are important to them because it is their life. And that's what you're trying to get with these character creation questions. But yeah, I mean, that's it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in, answer them as possible. But yeah, that's sort of the questions that I use for kind of fleshing out a character when I'm making a character for a new campaign, trying to think about, okay, these are the sort of things they do, this is the sort of things that are important to them, here are the important people in their backstory, here's sort of the life experiences they've had so far, and how all these things influence not only the person that they are, but how they interact with the world and how they view the world at large, and what is their perception of the reality of the world. And it's extremely helpful for for getting to a place where you feel like you can role play this character in any situation and never feel like, I don't know what my character would do here. this will help you get to a point with that character to be like, all right, I think I understand how this character would react to the situation and what they would do. And that's what we're trying to get to. So again, this is just a nice little send-off. I just thought it would be a nice thing to do after, you know, the news that How to Be a Great GM, that channel is going to be retiring, and this is built off of questions that Guy has put up many years ago about questions to ask about your character to understand who they are in the world, and then I've taken that and built it off and twisted some things and changed some things with my own sort of flair. So if you like it, grab it, take it, use it yourself, change it, manipulate it, make it your own. And you know what? I think that's going to be it for the stream today. I have one more thing I was going to go over, but I think I'm going to save that for next time. My throat's still a little... still got quite a bit of a cough, so I feel like I don't want to press it too hard, or I'm not going to be able to talk later. I'm probably going to need to do that, certainly for my next D&D game. But that's it, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you found this enjoyable, and I hope you learned something. And I think we'll see you guys next time. Probably going to be the solo RPG stream. We'll see. But whatever it is, it'll definitely be fun. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright? Bye-bye.